Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Penn State 365 podcast. My name is Dylan Count Curley, beat writer and recruiting analyst over here at Nittany Nation of the Rivals Network, covering Penn State football. I'm joined by my co-host, as always, and part of Black Shoe Diaries of SB Nation, Marty Lee. Marty, welcome back into the podcast as usual. Anthony, of course, is not here with us this week as he continues to have some school work coming up, which is fun. We hope to have Anthony back soon. Marty, not much to talk about in today's episode. We're just going to recap the Northwestern game a little bit. It was a sloppy, really ugly game for Penn State and Northwestern. And then just really discuss what we think Penn State needs to work on here during the bye week. By the time we're recording this, it's already halfway through the bye week, but still, nonetheless, we could discuss what they need to work on. So let's get right into this Northwestern win for Penn State, Marty, 17-7. But it's a game that Penn State really should have won by. I would say they could have won this game probably 31-7, even 38-7. There was a lot of misplays, missed opportunities for Penn State in this game. It was an ugly one, like I said. 5 turnovers, 1 interception by Sean Clifford, 4 fumbles lost. This is one of the uglier performances of the James Franklin era for Penn State, but luckily for them, they were able to still grab a win in it to improve to 5-0 in the season, head into this week's bye week before they get into the stretch of Michigan, Minnesota, and Ohio State, which will, of course, ultimately decide the fate of their season. This Northwestern game, what was your initial thoughts coming out of it?
I mean, coming out of it, like you said, it was ugly. It was a weird game. Like, even with the fumbles, I mean, if it's better weather conditions, they probably don't lose all the fumbles. I mean, there were 2 of those fumbles that were really good plays by Northwestern's defense. So they probably would have had at least 1 or 2 of them. But without the weather conditions, the fumbles don't happen. Penn State's difference in athleticism and speed on offense would have shined through more, and they probably waltzed to a 31-7, 35-7, something like that. Even Northwestern's touchdown, it came where we saw Abdul Carter make his first real freshman mistake of the year.
Yeah,
and turned around in coverage. So, like, this game could have, you take away Abdul Carter looking like a freshman for the first time all year, and if the weather conditions weren't, literally the tail end of a hurricane, this thing's not even remotely close. But, that you can't, like James Franklin said for the game, you can't make excuses for your performance. Offensively, they were nowhere near good enough. No. Even if fumbles aside, even if it wouldn't for the fumbles, this passing game is just, it's not good right now. But they're 5-0. They've got a bye week to fix things, so there's still plenty of good to go around.
Absolutely, and even going to Abdul Carter play where they allowed Jalen Gill to get open for the 46-yard touchdown from Helinski. That was also a play where you have Abdul Carter lined up on a slot receiver. I'm not sure how much you want that to happen throughout the course of a season. Would you like him to be able to do it here and there and be able to have faith that you're not going to go with a touchdown? Absolutely. But I don't care how athletic or fast Abdul Carter is. Putting him on a slot receiver in that situation, probably not the best decision by Manny Diaz and that coaching staff, but really throughout the game, I think that was really the only major mistake you could say on the coaching staff. This was a game that was hard to coach, especially offensively. If you're Mike Yurcich, again, 5 turnovers in this game, 4 fumbles, 1 interception. From Mike Yurcich's point of view, I thought he had a really good game plan going to this one. I thought the calls were good. The plays were there to be made. He was giving Penn State good looks, the offense, I should say, and Sean Clifford good looks throughout the game. The players just were not able to take advantage of those opportunities that they had. And I guess let's kind of go through this somewhat chronologically. So, Penn State, defense comes out, gets a 3-and-out. The defense for the Nittany Lions to begin this game was absolutely phenomenal. You look at Northwestern's first, I think, 7 series. First 7 series, it went punt, interception, punt, fumble, punt, fumble. I mean, that was the entirety of the first half for the Wildcats. If you're Penn State's defense, you're Manny Diaz, you could not have come out any better in this game. And we'll talk more about the defense. Let's talk about the offense. But Penn State's first offensive play series, eight plays, 34 yards. Had some solid momentum, but it obviously got killed there as they neared midfield. The second series is when we you kind of got an early glimpse that this wasn't going to be like the last few games. Penn State head into Week 5, just one turnover without being Sean Clifford's pick 6 in Week 1 against Purdue. But on that second drive, we see the first fumble of the game for the Nittany Lions, and if I am correct, that first fumble so it was actually, depending on who asked, the second fumble, even though Nick Singleton was down in, I believe, the first drive of the game for the Nittany Lions. Was it?
Yeah, he fumbled it, but forward progress had already been stopped. He went down, but the rest blown the whistle. So
either way, he put the ball on the ground. But the first official fumble of the game came then on the second drive when Nicholas Singleton put the ball on the ground for the second time in the game, the first one that actually counted, his first fumble in his career. Penn State's defense, though, like we said, was phenomenal the entire game, especially that first half. Despite the 5 turnovers, Northwestern had just, I think, 8 yards on those turnovers and no points. But Nick Singleton puts on the ground. Penn State gets the ball back. What does Sean Clifford do? He throws one of his worst passes of the season, looking for Harrison Wallace across the middle. If you go back and look at the play, there's quite a few people who are open, including Brandon Strange down towards his right in his vision or field of view, I should say. But Clifford looks for Harrison Wallace coming across the middle. Whether there was potentially some, communication errors between Clifford and Wallace, it's hard to say. But either way, he throws a pass intended for Wallace. Wallace, it's overthrown, ends up in the hands of Northwestern star linebacker Bryce Gallagher. Luckily, again, for Penn State, though, it didn't hurt them. The defense comes out, forces a 3-and-out, just giving up 5 yards. Penn State would score a touchdown on their next drive. Nick Singleton, with his, I think, best run of the day. He uses balance, he uses physicality, and it was one of his best hard-nosed runs this year. A very short touchdown run, but either way, Nick Singleton from sorry, that was the second touchdown. I'm all over the place. I've been under the weather. The first touchdown of the game was Brandon Strange on a 20-yard touchdown pass from Sean Clifford. It was actually a nice play designed by Mike Yursich on it. Let's talk about Brandon Strange quickly. Were you surprised Strange didn't get any targets after this touchdown early in the game, Marty? I mean, his only target was a 20-yard touchdown, but nothing after that.
Yeah, you definitely would like to see more, I can tell you that. I mean, Brenton Strange right now might be the best weapon they have in the passing attack.
Absolutely. He may be the best weapon they have, period.
Yeah, again, I didn't think we'd be saying this 5 weeks in, but the part of this team that needs to improve most over the bye week, which we'll get into, is the passing game.
Yeah.
But right now, Brenton Strange is your guy. You got to feed him the football. Now, again, some of that was probably what Mike Yursich was dialing up. Some of that you mentioned on the Trey Wallace interception. If Cliff just dumps it off to him, Strange would probably run for 10-plus yards and a first down on that play. So I'm sure some of it, too, was just a very, very poor game by Sean Clifford. But, moving forward, you definitely want to see Brenton Strange, utilize more in this passing game because, you haven't had a reliable number 3 receiver emerge behind Mitch Tinsley and Parker Washington yet. Keandre Lambert-Smith is probably your best shot at that, but he's hurt now. So you really, if Lambert-Smith doesn't play against Michigan and beyond, you really want to see Strange's use increase.
And I think in a game like Northwestern where it was a sloppy game, some people want to call it a monsoon, Penn State took a couple deep shots in this game, but for me, I think I would have look to utilize a guy like Strange in the short passing game, kind of dinking and dunking where you can, just to gain some momentum, because Penn State at times had no momentum offensively. But yeah, I definitely would have. I was definitely surprised with just the one target. I thought they would have definitely looked more his way, considering how the game went. But either way, Penn State takes a 7-0 lead late in the first quarter to get on the board after that sluggish start. 8 plays, 34 yards on the first drive, but then the 2 turnovers. They put that behind them, get up 7-0. They do punt their next drive, but then the Nick Singleton touchdown, 2 drives after the first touchdown. Like I was going to say, one of, I think, his best hard-nosed runs all year. Used his physicality, used his balance, and just forced his way into the end zone. It was nice to see that out of Singleton, who's very, very much been more of the, shifty home run type running back for Penn State, while Katron Allen has been that goal line type back. It was good to see Singleton be able to make that type of run. Again, just a 2-yard run, but it was good to see that physicality out of the true freshman.
Yeah, sorry, I realized I was muted there for a second. But you're seeing – it's good to see, and this is something we've talked about, Nick Singleton, and probably his biggest issue thus far is too much of that, like, quote-unquote high school mindset of bounce it outside and run past everybody.
He reminds me of Miles Sanders in that aspect.
Yes, it does remind me a lot of freshman and sophomore year Miles Sanders. That is a great comparison. But yeah, it's good to see him being willing to be a little more physical now. Now, hopefully, the fumble issues do not, spook him on that front, hurt his confidence on that front, anything like that.
Yeah.
And you'd like to think as a coaching staff, it's easy to play it off. So, hey, you know what, Nick? We would need to be better with the ball, but these elements suck, man. Like, those games are going to happen. Brush it off. Don't worry about it.
And now that he has shown, Mike Tomlin had a quote now towards the NFL. Mike Tomlin had a quote that I think you can use. I mean, one game is one game, but once you do it in more than 2 games, or you do it 2 times in 3 weeks, 2 times in 4 weeks, or whatever, it goes from just a one-off to a trend. You could write this off as just a bad day for Singleton, freshman mistakes in a bad weather game. But at the end of the day, he put the ball on the ground 3 times in this game, 2 times officially, but 3 times overall. Teams are going to attack that going forward. You have to bet that every time a tackler goes in on Nick Singleton the rest of the year, they're going to be coming with that closed fist trying to punch the ball out, whether it's from behind, in front, wherever it's coming from. They are going to try to punch the ball out of Nick Singleton's hands every time after this past week against Northwestern.
Yeah, without a doubt, and this probably that a lot of times that's going to be a problem for a freshman back anyway. But now that he's put it on tape, that the struggles with holding onto the ball, against Northwestern. So teams are going to be that way. It's going to be up to Singleton, it's going to be up to Jalen Sider, it's going to be up to this coaching staff. Yeah. Make sure that this does not continue to be an issue moving forward. And again, not just for Singleton, but for every back. We saw each of the backs fumble at least once. So yeah, it's definitely going to be something that will need to be cleaned up moving forward.
Absolutely. But Penn State, goes up 14-0, 5:02 remain in the second quarter. By the time they get up 14-0, you think, okay, that's 2 touchdown drives and 2 touchdowns in the last 3 drives. Perhaps they are starting to get momentum, and this is where they start to. I never got the sense they were going to run away with the game, but could they win 28-0, 31-something? Sure. But it never really came to fruition for Penn State in that aspect. So after that second touchdown, the next drive ends in another fumble. Again, it was an ugly, ugly day for Penn State from start to finish. And this fumble, this time, late in the second quarter, once again, comes via Nick Singleton. This was, for the majority, the last time we saw Nick Singleton have a handoff. I don't think he got another handoff until maybe late third quarter or early fourth quarter, or even perhaps deeper into the game. But after this second fumble, Singleton was not seen for a while in the backfield. Did you get the sense when they went up 14-0 that perhaps they'll settle down, and would be able to pull away?
Yeah, I definitely did. I felt once they got up 14-0, the offense scored 2 out of 3 drives. Thinking, all right, they've got this thing going. Now they're going to start cooking here. They're going to – and I never expected it maybe to get truly out of control. I think I predicted going into the game. I think I predicted them to win something like 35-13, 35-10,
sure,
somewhere around there. So you combine that with the elements. But I was thinking that, they're going to comfortably get up 21-0, 24-3, 24-0, somewhere around there and just kind of coast. And, obviously that's not at all what happened. And by the end of the game, it didn't take a goal line stand by the defense to win, but it took a goal line stand by the defense to keep things from really getting, really having to sweat things out. So, yeah, I'm with you, though. I thought when they were able to put together 2 out of 3 scoring drives there in the second quarter, late first quarter into the second quarter, I was like, all right, no need to worry. They're going to come out. They're going to take care of business, hop out to a nice 3-score lead here, and then just kind of coast to the finish.
Yeah, and we're to set the stage here of this series when Singleton fumbled for the second time. That was with, 1:58 left on the clock. And at that point, that was already the 5th turnover of the game, all in the first half. And it wouldn't be the last. Nick Tarberton, he's been a guy that we've said for Penn State, quality defensive end, just isn't that game changer that Penn State really needs him to be at times. He was a game changer on Saturday against Northwestern. He recovered a fumble just a couple drives later, actually. But then just 2 plays after Nick Singleton's fumble, what does Tarburn do? He comes out and strip sacks Ryan Helinski. Penn State gets the ball back. They would not be able to do anything. They got 1 yard and 2 plays before deciding to head into the locker room. But Nick Tarburn, fantastic game on Saturday, especially in that first half with the first forced fumble and the strip sack. What were your thoughts on Tarburn? I mean, if Penn State, they're not going to get that every week out of Tarburn, but if that was a game that maybe, flips a switch for him and he could become a little bit more of a game changer at defensive end, get a sack here and there, but, get a strip sack or just find himself around the football like he was, Penn State's defensive line, which is already deep, one of the best in the Big Ten and the country, is only going to be that much better.
No, I agree. I think it's probably the best game Nick Tarberton's played in his career at Penn State. He's always reliable against the run.
Yeah.
We saw him be more explosive in the pass rush on Saturday. I understand people want to come back with this Northwestern comment. And to an extent, I'll give you that. But in all honesty, this might be the best offensive line Penn State's seen yet this year.
Yeah.
So is it necessarily a good or great offensive line? Probably not. But it's still – other than at worst, the second best offensive line seen this year by probably Purdue. So,
yeah,
we saw Tarberton, and what I liked from Tarberton too was you saw him use more technique-wise in the pass rush. It wasn't just trying to bull rush the guy. We saw a really nice rip swim move. I think it was on the strip sack. He did a great job of ripping under the tackle, getting there. We saw him use some more speed and athleticism off the edge. So, yeah, a great game for Nick Tarberton. Like you said, you're not going to expect it every week out of him. But if you can get him to play more consistent and take a step forward like it looks like he might be taking, that goes a long way for a defensive line that already looks like it's in really good hands.
I 100% agree. And let's just talk about this defense more. I said it at the top what this defense did in the first half. Again, I'll run through this first half series for the defense. Just a phenomenal first half. There's no question about it. Starting the game with 3 straight punts. Then they get an interception. I believe that was Jair Brown who had the interception, his second in 3 games. Another punt. Fumble recovery by Nick Tarberton. Punt. And then Nick Tarberton with the strip sack fumble. So 3 turnovers forced in that first half. If you look at the first half stats for Penn State's defense, let's look at that. Just tremendous, especially considering all the struggles the offense had in the first half. What Penn State's defense was able to do single-handedly saved this game. Because Penn State was able to clean it up a little bit in the second half. Still wasn't pretty. But the defense by far was the biggest reason Penn State won this game on Saturday. In that first half, Obviously, no points allowed. Just 78 total yards allowed. 40 yards on the ground allowed on just 20 carries. That number would get even better in the second half. Through the air, Helinski was just 3 for 11 with an interception for 38 yards. Kept Northwestern 2 for 7 on third downs. 2.5 yards allowed per play. 3 turnovers forced. I mean, they just that defense in the first half was one of the best one of the best halves we've seen out of the Penn State defense in a very long time, whether it's Vanny Diaz or Brent Pry.
Yeah, like you said, that defense needed, with the way the offense was playing, with turning the ball over, struggling to finish off drives, struggling to score points. The defense needed to go above and beyond on Saturday, and to their credit, they did. And just, this is 2 years in a row now we're seeing this defense consistently be put. Well, not consistently; it's not nearly as bad as it was last year, but it's 2 years in a row now that when we see this defense, I should say, get put in a tough spot by the offense, whether it be a turnover or whatever it is, step up and get off the field. And it's not even that they're holding teams to field goal attempts. It's not even that. Half the time they're forcing punts, turnover on downs, forcing turnovers, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Just, incredible stuff. I mean, thus far, Manny Diaz looks like an absolutely tremendous hire by James Franklin. So tip of the cap to everyone involved there. But yeah, this defense is a lot of fun. And, this defense has got to give you some confidence as a Penn State fan that no matter who you run into this year, you should have at least a shot, because this defense should keep it close against everybody.
Absolutely. And let's go into this conversation quickly. Are you surprised by how good the Penn State defense is this year? I mean, we knew the Nittany Lions defense was going to be good, but I'm not sure we thought it was going to be at this level of good. Obviously, they have one of the best secondaries in the country. Linebackers so far have not been a liability. They haven't necessarily been a strength, but they've what's the word I'm looking for here? They've been
for the linebackers. You're saying?
Yeah, the linebackers. They haven't been a liability. They haven't been great.
Consistent, I guess.
Consistent. They've been. I'm going to be an idiot.
I mean, they've definitely been better than anticipated. We can definitely say that, because I think we all
serviceable. They've been serviceable.
Yeah, serviceable. Perfect. Yeah. And I think we all expected the linebackers to definitely be a major weakness, and it's still the weakness of the defense. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But definitely been better than anyone could have hoped for.
And then the defensive line has been obviously fantastic. Like I said, I think you have an argument for the best defensive line in terms of performance. By the way, no, not an argument. Best performance by a defensive line in the Big Ten so far this year, and one of the best performing defensive lines in the country. They're getting to the quarterback. They're stopping the run, which we all thought we had questions about. Now, they'll be really tested over the next couple of weeks, but so far so good. But have you been surprised just how good they've been? I mean, they've just been phenomenal under Manny Diaz. And the other thing that has really been eye-opening is with Manny Diaz's aggressive defense, they're going to give up big chunk plays. They're going to put themselves in bad spots at times. But they've done a really good job about putting those plays behind you, which is something Manny Diaz talked about this offseason, putting those plays behind you and then focusing on the next play and getting off the field. Penn State's done a great job of not letting those chunk plays, big plays, to really stack. Yes, they'll have about a series of 2 per game where they will get beat a little bit more than the rest of the time. But overall, they've been, done a great job of limiting the opposition's momentum offensively.
Yeah, it's weird to me, because coming into the year, I expected this defense to be pretty solid, without a doubt. But at the same time, I think, they definitely have been better than anticipated. And to me, it's like you look at the secondary. It's crazy to say with the secondary. I feel like they've exceeded expectations, which is saying something considering how insanely high the expectations were coming here. What are they at? 48, 49 pass breakups already. The second most by any other team in the country is 30. It's insanity. The linebackers, as we've said, Have they been great? No, but like serviceable is the perfect word. And when you come into the year expecting it to be a weak spot, you're expecting it to be poor, and you get serviceable, you'll take that. And especially when your defensive line, like I expected this D-line to be good. I didn't expect them to be this good this quickly. And a big part of it, I know this is something I talked about a lot in fall camp and the early part of the season, with an Adiza Isaac, with a Hakeem Beamon, PJ Mustafer, these guys who hadn't played in so long, getting them to knock the rust off. Chop Robinson might already be the best pass rusher in the Big Ten, and he's played 5 games as a full-time defensive end. Dennis Sutton the last couple of weeks is showing you why he was a 5-star edge guy that Penn State had to fight tooth and nail with Bama and Georgia to land. Like, this defensive line, man, I think there's still a lot of untapped potential there, honestly. I think Dennis Sutton's only going to keep getting better. Chop Robinson's only going to keep getting better. This past Saturday was the first time all year PJ Mustafer looked like PJ Mustafer. So, yeah, I think this defensive line, there's room for it to keep improving. He finally got Kazai Izzard back in the mix, and it's been awesome. So, yeah, to me, I expected the defense to be really good, but I'm still been surprised by how well they've played because they've been better than I expected, which is really saying something because I had a very high bar and very high expectations for this group coming into the year.
Yeah, I mean, just 14.8 points allowed per game. If they played that level of defense, this team has a chance of going 10-2, 11-1. It's very hard for me to sit down here and say I can imagine a world where Penn State beats Ohio State this year. I think they could give them a game. I just don't think they could beat them. But 11-1 is very much in the possibility for Penn State if the defense continues to play at this level. And some casual fans will look at the pass defense and be like, they've allowed, I think it's like 266 yards per game this year, 262 yards per game, which isn't great, obviously. But if you look at how many times opposing teams are throwing the ball against them, I mean, 59, 40, 38, 52, 37. The fewest amount of passes they faced through 5 weeks is 37. There's no opposing teams are throwing way more into this secondary than they should because Penn State has been consistently getting out to leads against opponents, which has been huge for them this year, and forcing teams to throw a ton in the second half. But when teams are throwing at you 37 plus times per game, you're going to give up, 230, 240, 250 plus yards per game. And I mean, Purdue threw for 360. Aiden O'Connell, Purdue threw for 365. Auburn had 296, but outside that, 164, 275, 210. The yardage may not be, a sexy number. It's not like 168 passing yards allowed. But they've done a terrific job in, I think, limiting how many yards per attempt and per completion these quarterbacks are getting, which has been a big part of this defense's success. And to another degree, this hasn't also been a typical Penn State, bend but don't break type defense, which has always been a Penn State defense. This defense doesn't even break that much. Bend that much. I mean, this defense, I think, has only bended maybe, 2 or 3 times per game, you could say. The rest of the time, opposing offenses are rarely getting past, I would say, Penn State's maybe 35. They're just not allowing teams to get deep on them.
Yeah, they really aren't. It's impressive. Again, you look at this defense, and you if you're a Penn State fan, you've got to at least have some sliver of confidence they can beat anybody because this defense is going to keep you in the game.
Yeah.
You mentioned like the yardage thing with the pass attempts, and I think this is something that's going to be very important going into Michigan. And I know we talked about this going to the Auburn game. Remember on our pre-show for the Auburn game, you asked Anthony and I.
Yeah.
Excuse me. He said, how many rushing yards does Penn State have told Auburn to for you to feel confident? I said, to me, it's not a yards thing. It's a yard per carry thing. I think that's something we're seeing with this defense. Like you said, when you have teams throwing the ball almost 40 times a game against you, now some of that is because you've led wire to wire in almost every game, so they've had to throw the ball coming from behind. And then you throw in, your only close game was Purdue, who is going to throw the ball 50, 60 times a game, whether they're winning or losing. And that's going to inflate some numbers. But again, if you look at, the success rate for opposing passing attacks, you look at passes defended, you look at opposing QBR, the stats that are going to paint a much more accurate picture than, kind of the old school way of yards per game, everything reflects this Penn State defense as just being one of the absolute best in the Big Ten, if not the best in the country. And, you mentioned the bend but don't break, and like I said, they haven't bent often. And, they're going to give up the occasional chunk play, but that's the Manny Diaz experience. Manny's aggressive. And you know what? I'll give up 3 to 5 chunk plays a game if in turn that's going to equal 2 turnovers, 3 sacks, and 8 tackles for loss. Because in the end, that's going to be a net win for your defense. If you give up a 35-yard chunk play, but then, you come out, you bat a pass down, you get a sack, maybe you draw a holding penalty, and next thing you know, you back that offense up, and they're either looking at a long field goal or, 4th down, no man's land where they go for it, whatever it might be. That's still a win for your defense, and that's what we've seen from this defense. And one other thing, too, and I mean, not to go off a tangent, I could talk about this defense all day. It's so much fun to watch. When you have cornerbacks like Penn State has, it makes it a lot easier also for Manny Diaz to play his defense because it doesn't matter. I mean, obviously, Joey Porter Jr., the kid might be the first cornerback off the board in April. He might be a top 10 pick in April. Just an absolute stud. Yeah. Kalen King looks like a future first-round pick. John Dixon,
Kalen King may end up being a better corner than Joey Porter Jr.
He really may. Like, Joey's always going to get the vibe, get the hype because he's got the athletic freak in him and the measurables. And Kalen may be the better pure corner.
He just blankets guys.
He does. You've got 2 legitimate shutdown cornerbacks on your roster. You've got 2 other cornerbacks that at worst are going to play for a long time in the NFL. When you have that, especially on a college roster, you can put your guys on an island and tell your linebackers, tell your defensive ends, go get the quarterback. Go get him because we trust our secondary, and that goes a long, long way, and we've seen it pay off this year already.
Yeah, this team isn't the most talent. This defense isn't the most talented by pure talent standards that Penn State's had, but there has been very few defenses in the James Franklin era, and very few defenses in the James Franklin era that have been as cohesive and as I guess cohesive is really the word as this defense. Like every single part complements the other, and they really all feed off each other really well. Everybody's backing up everybody. I mean, if somebody misses a play or misses a tackle, there's always somebody right behind them coming in to make the tackle or play. It really is outstanding how they've done it. I mean, five games, they've only allowed defenses to get into the red zone 15 times. I think there's not a ranking number here, but I assume it looks like about top 25 in the country. I mean, if you're allowing just 3 red zone attempts per game, and by the way, out of those 15 red zone attempts, they've only allowed 6 touchdowns. You're going to take that every day of the week. Just 6 touchdowns, 4 field goals. When they are bending, they rarely break into the point of allowing a touchdown, and that's what's going to give them a chance in every game this season. Is this defense just doesn't have any quit in them, and a drive is not over against this defense when you get into the red zone. They're not going to suddenly collapse in the red zone and give up a touchdown. They are going to make you work for that touchdown in the red zone. I mean, how many times out of those 6 touchdowns, how many of those red zone touchdowns have come on like the first or second play? It usually takes these opposing offenses 3 or even 4 plays to score a touchdown, and that happened against Northwestern this week as well, and it happened against Auburn. I mean, that's the big reason Penn State won that game against Auburn like they did, is because Auburn could not score in this Penn State defense in the red zone. So even when they are bending to that point, they're just doing a phenomenal job of settling back down and getting the job done, which Brent Pry's defenses were great, but that was not always the case with Brent Pry. It was last year, though. It was last year.
Yeah, you mentioned that Auburn game, and I go back. I mean, the final score wound up 41-12. Obviously, it was not by no means was it a close game. It was a game Penn State came out and stepped on the throat. But early in that game, and who knows, it might have just wound up 41-16 instead. But when Auburn got that drive, got down inside the 10, and Penn State held them to a field goal. Set up by that, I don't remember if it was a sack, tackle for loss. I remember Curtis Jacobs having a real big play in that drive. That set the tone for that game, I felt. Like I said, if the Tigers get 7 there, maybe the final score is instead of 41-12 is 41-16. Who knows? I'm sure Penn State probably still wins that game, but that really set the tone where Penn State just kind of never. Even when that game was close, you never felt like Auburn had a chance, and a big part of it was the defense. You go back to this Northwestern game, we talked about it. Even when it was 17-7 in the fourth quarter, Northwestern was driving, you still felt like Northwestern never really had a chance, and it was because of the defense. And, as I touched on earlier, that goal line stand by the defense didn't necessarily, seal the game or whatever, but it definitely made it to where you didn't have to sweat it out.
Absolutely. And let's get back into the Northwestern game. So Penn State 14-0 going into halftime. Come out in the third quarter, think perhaps maybe to put those turnovers behind them. And what do they do the first drive of the second half? They fumble the ball away this time, Kevon Lee. Which for Lee, really unfortunate because Penn State, after Nick Singleton's fumbles, really turned to Lee as the guy to head that rushing attack in the second quarter. Now, part of that was due to Katron. That was this week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Katron Allen was not available in the first half for Penn State, and on top of that, Devin Ford left the program this past week. So Penn State in that first half had only 2 running backs, but then once Nick Singleton fumbled the ball twice, put the ball on the ground 3 times, they went to Kevon Lee the rest of that first half until Katron Allen was available in the second half. But yeah, Lee comes out, fumbles on that first drive. Penn State had a nice drive going on that there as well. 12 plays, 42 yards. Fumbled that ball on Northwestern's side of the field. Which, if Penn State's able to get a touchdown there, that game is 21-0 at that point. It would be no question about it, and I think they could have even pulled away further from that. Either way, Northwestern comes out on offense, and of course, as the Penn State defense did all day, they shut down Northwestern, didn't allow the turnover to be a difference. That being said, 2 drives later in the game, next drive for Northwestern, they would finally get on the board. Ryan Helinski to Jalen Gill, 46-yard touchdown that we talked about at the top of the show, that Abdul Carter was on Gill, who was in the slot. Carter, as a freshman, just blew the coverage. He blew the coverage. But also, despite blowing the coverage, he actually did not a terrible job of catching back up with Gill. But with the slippery grass, was not able to make the tackle. Gill goes in for the touchdown. It's suddenly a game at 14-7. I mean, Penn State was dominating defensively up until that point. Offensively, they were putting up the yardage, just didn't have the points because of the turnovers. There was a lot of callbacks at that point that, hey, this is starting to feel like Illinois of last year.
Yeah, it definitely had some hardcore Illinois 2.0 vibes. And, one thing I will say, as ugly as this was, as unsatisfying of a victory as this was, 2021 Penn State loses this game. I don't have any doubt in my mind they would have lost this game last year.
Yeah.
So that's definitely, it's something. I don't know what it is, but it's something. But this game was, it was starting to feel way too much like the Illinois game to me. Had they scored on that 4th and goal, I think everyone would have really been like, oh boy, here we go again. And again, they didn't, because this is a different year. It's a different team. I think they're a better team. They're a more resilient team.
They're more mature.
Yeah, they are definitely a lot more mature. I think having on that defense. I think having PJ Mustafer as opposed to not having him for the second half of last year makes a huge difference, obviously. And, it's not just that he anchors your defensive lines, that he's your captain, he's your leader. But, yeah, it started to feel way too much like that Illinois game from last year for me because it was so similar. Not the best of weather. Penn State jumps out to his 2-score lead. You're like, all right, but your coach is going to be just fine. And then they start
put it away.
On around, and it just falls apart.
Yep. And they never did, and it never felt like they could put this game away. They had plenty of opportunities, just never could. And now credit to the offense. After that touchdown, what did they do? They went out and got a field goal to make it a 2-score game again, 17-7 at that point, which would obviously be the final score of the game. But the defense, we talked about them not bending much this year. They bent on the very next drive for Northwestern. And during that drive, as you see Northwestern go down the field, get into the red zone and basically the goal line, you're thinking here, like, you started with the Illinois thoughts before on that last touchdown, and now you think, okay, Penn State gets a 17-7. It took forever for Northwestern to have one drive to score. What are the chances that Northwestern is able to get another long scoring drive? And, to their credit, they went, let me get the full drive length here, 10 plays, 74 yards. They did it again. But Penn State's defense, as they've done so many times this year, came up big when it mattered most. Caused a turnover on downs. Now, they got a little lucky. Ryan Helinski, quarterback sneak on 4th and 1 at the goal line. It looked like he got in, but it also... It was hard from my vantage point. I've seen it on video once or twice. I guess his knee touched the ground right before he rolled into the end zone.
I think if you watch the replay, I think it was more of a mistake by Helinski than anything. It looked like if he would have extended the football, it would have been. I think it would have been in. But, from the pylon camera angle, it looked pretty clear that when his knee was down, the ball had yet to break the plane, but he still had the ball tucked. If he would have extended the football, I think that probably gets called a touchdown and doesn't get overturned. But hey, we'll take it. We'll take it.
Absolutely, and a big factor on that play, somebody who we talked about in the preview of Northwestern, PJ Mustafer. Mustafer was a big reason that Helinski could not just go right up the middle for the quarterback sneak to get the touchdown. He forced Helinski to go to the left side, and which eventually, forced the turnaround on downs. But PJ Mustafer, we wondered if he was ever going to be able to get back to full speed where he looked like last year. And man, did he look good against Northwestern. Led the team with 8 tackles and just dominated the middle of that defensive line for Penn State. A big reason that the Nittany Lions in this game kept Northwestern to just 31 rushing yards on 28 attempts, including -9 yards in the second half. What a great day for Mustafer. Mustafer is back to looking like what he did last year and continues to play that he showed this past weekend. Penn State's defensive line is, like we said with Tarberton, just going to be all that much better because having that force in the middle of your defense is going to make it much tougher for these opposing offenses over the next couple of weeks to run the ball on you.
Yeah, it's coming at a perfect time, too, for P.J. Mustafer to run back into form. Obviously, Michigan, in terms of what they're going to do with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, pound of rock. And then you get Minnesota, who, assuming Mo Ibrahim is back by then, they're going to want to do the same thing. And if Ibrahim isn't back, then Minnesota's not moving the ball on anybody, so it doesn't matter. But, yeah, getting Mustafer back for these next 2 weeks is huge because, obviously we'll get into the Michigan matchup much more next week. But it's a game Penn State can win. I know it's in the big house. I know Michigan's going to go in, barring them puking all over themselves against Indiana, is going to go in ranked in the top 5. But it's a game they can win, and a big part of the reason they can win is because of P.J. Mustafer anchoring that defensive line and slowing down Corum in the rushing attack. So, yeah, P.J. Mustafer rounding into form could not be happening at a better time for this defense.
Absolutely. And from there, that drive really killed all of Northwestern's momentum in the game. They would really never recover from. They would not recover from that. Their next 3 drives, just 4 plays each, 5, 11, 8 yards. So none of them technically are 3 and outs. But Penn State didn't allow Northwestern to pick up a first down the remainder of the game after that. A goal line stop. Penn State's offense wouldn't do much either. They'd have another fumble this time by Katron Allen. So, like you said, all 3 running backs used in the game fumble. But other than that, Penn State survives the 5 turnovers behind a terrific defensive effort to win 17-7. Not the prettiest of games, but I think at that point you look around the country of the last 2 weeks. Penn State is 5-0 heading into their bye week. You can't ask for much more. Before we go into the bye week, Marty, any final thoughts on the Northwestern game and Penn State being 5-0 as they head into the heart of their season here that, like I said, is going to decide their entire fate?
No, I mean, I definitely did not have them at 5-0 preseason. I have this team going 9-3, and that included a 4-1 start because I thought they would lose at Auburn. So definitely a great start on that front. Coming out of this, just the biggest thing in this bye week, they've got to get this passing game figured out. It is not good right now. Michigan, probably a team you might be able to sneak by without a great passing attack. But if you truly want to reach your goals of winning the Big Ten, and I think this team's got the overall potential to do it, you've got to be able to get this passing attack going.
All right. And before we get into our next segment, a quick word from our sponsors from our sponsor, Adam Goldman, over at franchisecoach.net. Are you a displaced corporate executive or wanting to put your career in your own hands? Are you an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify? Well, Adam Goldman can help. Adam is a Nittany Nation member, a Nittany Lions fan, and a franchise veteran for over a decade. Using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough and free consultation process. 100% free, so what do you have to lose? Your own new business made easy. Find your perfect franchise at franchisecoach.net or call Adam at any time at 844-800-3726. Again, 844-800-3726 or at franchisecoach.net. All right, Marty. It's the bye week for Penn State, 5-0. They have a little bit of time here, extra time here to prepare for the Michigan Wolverines, who take on Indiana this week before the showdown next weekend, which is set for big noon kickoff on Fox. Like you said, the passing game for Penn State started off hot this season, no doubt about it. The last 2 games, though, it has created some concern. Sean Clifford has regressed the last 2 weeks, something that cannot happen going forward. If we see the Sean Clifford of weeks 1 through 3, Marty, Penn State, I think, wins in the Big House. If we see Sean Clifford the last 2 weeks, I'm not sure Penn State is able to cover, let alone win the game. With this passing offense, it is partially on Sean Clifford. His footwork has regressed. His accuracy has regressed. His decision-making at times has regressed. All 3 need to take a step forward again. That being said, this passing game lost a part of it this past week against Northwestern in Keandre Lambert-Smith. He was seen in a boot fall in the game. We do not know his availability going forward. If they don't have KLS, it only makes the question of who is the number 3 wide receiver even more of a question. It was a question heading in the Northwestern game because Parker Washington, Mitchell Tinsley, and Brent Strange have been the only guys who've really made an impact in the passing game. Nobody else has really separated themselves. But without KLS, it really falls on Harrison Wallace to be that guy. He had an opportunity to have a big touchdown against Northwestern, wasn't able to bring in a rather perfect pass from Sean Clifford. What's your confidence level in the wide receiver room beyond those top 2 / Brendan Strange? Because we just haven't seen anybody really separate themselves or break out yet this season. We've seen flashes, but flashes can only take you so far when you go up against the likes of Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio State, Maryland.
Yeah, I think anyone tells you they're confident any receiver outside of Washington, Tinsley, and Brendan Strange is just out and out lying to you. Is the talent there? Is the ability there? Absolutely. It absolutely is with this group. we got to see it. We got to see it. Keandre Lambert-Smith, when he gets healthy, we've got to see him take a step forward and put it together. Trey Wallace has battled the drops this year.
Yep.
Caden Saunders, I know he's been banged up some. Would love to see him maybe make a big jump over this bye week, be ready to contribute a bit more. Get Theo Johnson healthy would be great as another another receiving threat from tight end. But yeah, the talent's there, the ability's there. We need to see it, though. We haven't seen it. So it's impossible to have any faith right now in any of these receivers after, those top two, Parker Washington and Mitch Tinsley.
Yeah, the other thing I think that is big in this bye week, honestly, got to hold on to the football. I would hate to be the running backs in the ball security drills this week. It must be hell in there because Sider and Franklin are driving that home. Other areas I think if you're at Penn State to improve in the bye week, I mean, pass protection has been pretty good this year, all things considered. Just a handful of sacks so far through 5 games. I think Sean Clifford himself has only been sacked 5 times. So pass protection has been good. You'd like to continue to see improvement out of the right side. Run game, still inconsistent at times in the run blocking. Definitely want to continue to improve that, be more consistent there. What are any other areas that you look in offense or defense that they need improvements out of? I know we could go to special teams, points to the place kicking, or even the kickoffs, but what areas do you see that need some major improvements in the bye week?
I mean, you want to see linebacker improve. I know we said it's been serviceable. You want to see more than serviceable. That said, not really sure how feasible that is with what's there talent-wise.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit of a different animal. But to me, it's a passing game. Sean Clifford has to be better. He has to be better. It's year 6 on campus. It's year 4 as a starter. And he doesn't look like he's improved at all from his first year as a starter. In some ways, he looks like he's regressed. Just his.
I think what makes him most frustrating for fans is he will show games like the first 3 games of the season where he looks like a improved quarterback, a better quarterback, but then out of nowhere, he against sometimes the easier opponents, he regresses into his bad habits, and he misses. But it's not the interceptions that hurt Penn State. It's
Correct.
the missed opportunities, the missed plays. He had a play against Northwestern. He had He had Parker Washington wide open with what would have been a large gain. He missed him. He flat out missed him. I believe he threw too far ahead of him. Those plays cannot be missed against these better opponents, and that includes both Minnesota and Maryland. Minnesota, I know they lost Purdue, still a dangerous team. Maryland, though, that offense is going to give Penn State as much of a hard time defensively as I think Ohio State may just a couple weeks before.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Excuse me, with Clifford. It's not the turnovers that are problematic. I see people say all the time, well, he doesn't turn the ball over, He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. That's true. But it's the plays he doesn't make. When he has a wide open Parker Washington for a big gain. When he's got Mitch Tinsley with a step and a half on the defensive back for a walk-in touchdown and he can't make the throw, which is something we've seen him struggle with since his first year as a starter. When he's in the pocket and has time and just completely panics and collapses the pocket on himself, when he doesn't set his feet, when he doesn't go through his progressions, those are the plays where Sean Clifford hurts this offense. And those are the plays where a 6-year senior quarterback, 4th-year starter quarterback, you can't happen. You have to Drew is out there and does some of that stuff. You can live with that more because it's the true freshman. He's going to have his learning moments. But, yeah, like you said, he can't have that happening against the better teams. You've got to clean it up moving forward. You've got to be better moving forward, and we'll see. Sean Clifford, for all of his shortcomings, I know this is something we talked about today in our Black Shit Irish chat. If not for a plethora of things, none of which were actually his fault, he's 3-0 in his career against Michigan because they should have won that game last year. And the 3 biggest issues is why they didn't even have anything to do with Clifford. So Michigan doesn't always seem to be a team he does kind of step up and bring his A game against.
And Ohio State. The one thing you could say about Sean Clifford is when the spotlight is on, he does tend to take it up a notch when it's these bigger programs. I mean, Auburn, he had a great game. He's had great games against Ohio State and Michigan in the past. So when it is bigger programs, he does tend to turn the light. He does tend to take his game to another level. We'll see if that trend continues in 2 weeks, or a little less than 2 weeks at this point. Other than that, I think you look, like we said, the kicking game, you have to be consistent in the place kicking duties. Vinegar made his 2 field goals, made a 38-yarder against Northwestern, but he has been inconsistent. He cannot be inconsistent over the next couple of weeks for Penn State. If he is, they will lose games. Kickoff duties were better this week for Penn State. Need to be consistent there. Overall, there's really not much you look at this Penn State team and say they are really struggling here and there. There are things you need to clean up, a lot of small things we haven't talked about. But overall, I think you have to feel pretty good about what this Penn State team is. The only question I think ultimately is this Penn State team the team we saw through the first 3 weeks of the season, or is this Penn State team closer to the one we've seen the last 2 weeks where if you want to put out excuses or devil's advocate, you could say they sleptwalked through Central Michigan because it was coming off a major win over Auburn. And then Northwestern, you could point to the weather and say, you know what, it was a monsoon. Their play calling was predictable throughout the game. It is what it is. The question, that is the ultimate question. What is Penn State's offense? What is their offensive identity going forward? We will find out, I think, against Michigan, who this Penn State team really is.
Yeah, and I know there's going to be a lot of parallels made, a lot of comparisons made between this team and last year, and I understand they're both 5-0. And especially if Penn State does lose to Michigan. That said, this team is a much different 5-0 than last year's squad to me.
Yeah.
Like, the offense, last year that Villanova game should have been so much more of a red flag than I think people looked at it as in the time.
They reached what were they going to that Iowa game? 5?
4. Iowa was 3.
4?
Penn State was 4.
4. All right, 4. Penn State never felt like going to that game. They didn't feel like a top 4 team in the country.
No, and right now they're sitting 11th. I think that
10,
feels
10.
about right.
They're 10.
Yeah, 10th. Excuse me.
They feel like a top 10 team.
Yeah, last year they didn't feel like. This year the defense has been more aggressive, a lot more turnovers. The offense has been running the ball basically at will, which has been great. The passing attack hasn't been. And here's my thing: the passing attack has not been good enough. Don't get me wrong. But the passing attack is better than the running game was last year by a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the offensive line has come leaps and bounds. Like, this is a much better football team than last year's team that was 5-0. I mean, just look no further than the Auburn game. Is this Auburn team really that much different from last year's Auburn team? Probably not. And they went to Jordan Hare and just kicked their teeth in. Last year they had to slide the Hail Mary in the last play of the game in front of a whiteout to win.
And I know it's a rivalry game, so it is what it is. But we'll kind of get a good indicator of, we'll get a good indicator this week of what Auburn really is and what Penn State really did down there because I believe this weekend Auburn is hosting Georgia.
Correct. But I mean, even Auburn, even after last weekend, I think you've got to look at Auburn more positively than you did before. They played a pretty solid LSU team that's now ranked, and the only loss is to a 1-loss Florida State on some fluky stuff. And they honestly probably should have beaten LSU.
Auburn isn't isn't going to be a 3. I mean, they still may end up being. They're not going to be like a 3-9, 4-8 team that we thought maybe at an hour of that game. But yeah, they're not great either. But they're an average Power 5 team.
Yeah, they're a bowl team. You went on the road against a Power 5 team. That's going to be a bowl team at a very hostile environment and cruise to victory in a game that you won 41-12 and probably wasn't really that close. That says a lot about any team. Like, go ask Alabama. Every Alabama fan in the world would sign up to beat Auburn 41-12 the next time they go to Jordan Hare. I can tell you that much.
Absolutely, and I think from here, so I mean, I think we put it greatly there of how this Penn State team feels going into the bye week, heading into this heart of the schedule. Last year's team, like we said, number 4 going against Iowa. They never felt like the number 4 team. Could they have been top 10? Maybe, but there were so many questions about what Penn State really was last year that at number 4 you didn't feel it. But at number 10, I look at the country. I look around the country. I look at Penn State, and number 10 feels right. If this team goes out and plays like they did the first 3 weeks of the season, this is without a doubt a top 10 team. I think it's a borderline top 8, top 6 team in the country. If they come out the last 2 weeks, I still think they're a top 25 team in the country. I think they're even maybe a top 15 team. They just may not be top 10. But ultimately, that's what we'll find out against Michigan. Is this a team, a top 10 team, or is this team merely just a top 15 to 25 team in the country? Which, if Penn State still goes 10-2, 9-3, coming into the season, you would have looked at that as a success. Now you're looking at that as a little bit of a letdown. But ultimately, I think you have to feel much better about what this Penn State team is after 5 weeks than you do after 5 weeks last season.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like we said, this team just looks. The eye test tells me this team at 5-0 is much better than last year's team at 5-0 was. And, I mean, like you said, if you go 10-2, that's roaring success. And if you're Penn State and you're 10-2, you're getting to New Year's Six Bowl. It's going to happen because of your brand, because of the way your fans travel. So any fan out there who would not be happy with 10-2 at this point, that you're kidding yourself with what the expectations were coming into the year and with what had unfolded the previous 2 seasons.
Yeah, and final thing before we get into our predictions for Week 6, I'd say I think the final thing really that makes this team feel like a top 10 team and a potential. I mean, I like I said, I think this team's ceiling really is 11-1. If they went 11-1, I wouldn't be surprised. If they went 9-3, I wouldn't be surprised. I think that's their range. This team, though, I feel is better suited, ultimately, from a roster standpoint, to handle adversity. They got 2 quarterbacks I think you could trust to go in there and do a quality enough job to keep you in a game or to win you a game. And I think outside of maybe just at wide receiver, they could lose a player and you could look and be like, okay, but this guy can step in and fill that whole position hole pretty easily. So maybe wide receiver is that only one. Like if they lost Parker Washington or Mitchell Tinsley, it would be pretty tough. But having that run game that they have this year is really big for them. And I mean, they haven't even gotten everybody involved in offense yet. I mean, we've barely seen Theo Johnson or Tyler Warren this year. Any thoughts before we give our predictions for Week 6?
No, I think we summed it up pretty well. Like this team is in position to be very successful. This team can be very successful. You need to see the passing game improve a little bit, but if you can get a little bit of improvement from the passing game and see Sean Clifford just give you what he gave you the first 2 weeks of the year, this could be a really fun stretch in October into November.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into our predictions for Week 6. We'll start at 12 p.m. on ESPN. One of the better games of the week. Number 8, Tennessee, heads down to Death Valley to take on number 25, LSU. Tennessee, a 3-point favorite. Over-under set at 65. I could get why this is a 3-point spread, but I feel like Tennessee is the much better team right now. LSU's defense is good, yes, but I feel really good about what this LSU team is right now. They bounced back. Sorry, Tennessee team is right now. LSU did bounce back well from that 24-23 loss to Florida State, but this is by far the best offense they have faced all season. This Tennessee offense has been able to put up points against everybody so far, including a good Florida defense and a good Pitt defense. So give me Tennessee here to cover that 3-point spread.
Yeah, I'm with you. Give me the Vols to cover. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Vols cover pretty easy. I think this offense is just a heck of a lot better than LSU. And, I think LSU's defense is good, but Tennessee's offense will get rolling and get into the 30s, and I'm not sure LSU's going to be able to keep up with that.
We're going to stay in the noon time slot, this one on FS1. It is one of the best stories of the year. Number 19, Kansas. Number 19. I can't believe I'm saying those words, Marty. Number 19, Kansas is hosting number 17, TCU. TCU is a 6.5-point favorite here. Over under set 68.5. I love Kansas, Marty. I really do. I just don't know if they can stop TCU enough in this game to win this one. So give me TCU to win. I'm going to take TCU to cover. I think TCU wins 7 to 10 points probably. After what TCU did to Oklahoma last week, I mean, the Horned Frogs have to be considered a contender for the Big 12.
You coward, you coward, you coward. Do not bet against my beloved Kansas Jayhawks. I mean, no, you said how weird to say number 19 Kansas. No, it's even weirder than that. College game day is going to Lawrence on Saturday.
Yeah.
And we're talking about college game day for football, not for – I can't wait. I don't know if I've ever been this excited for a college game day that was not in Happy Valley. Like, I am so stoked for this. It's been so much fun to watch. Just as someone who loves college football, who loves the sport, it's been so great. Give me the Jayhawks, man. They win. I'm not betting against this team until they give me a reason to. Jalen Daniels is as fun a player as there is in college football. This offense is cooking. Give me the Jayhawks. They stay undefeated. Cinderella continues to ride for at least another week. And I do think, in all honesty, though, third straight sellout, that crowd is going to be jacked up with game day in town. I think that will play a large factor in this. I think they're going to feed off that crowd, and this will be the first time TCU, has really had to face a hostile environment with Sonny Dykes as the coach. Give me the Jayhawks.
I mean, last week's college football was obviously just crazy, but I mean, in this week's ranking, TCU, UCLA, Kansas State, Syracuse, Cincinnati, Mississippi State, and then if you go up and include teams like Wake Forest and Kentucky, like, can you imagine telling somebody like 5 years ago that in week 6 of 2022 all those teams would be ranked? And then, I mean, like, teams like Washington State and would be on the, right outside. I mean, James Madison is 27, 28, 30th in the country, basically. I mean, what a crazy year of college football it's been already.
The James Madison thing, real quick, I don't know. I think there's a lot of people out there who don't realize that's an FBS program now. And I include AP voters in that because if you go look at their resume and what they've done to teams, there's no reason for them not to be ranked. And I honestly think there are at least a handful of AP voters who don't realize James Madison is now an FBS program.
Yeah, what James Madison is doing so far is phenomenal. They've outscored their opponents 179 to 55 so far. All right, a few more games here quickly. Auburn, Georgia, 3:30 p.m. on CBS. This game's in Georgia, so that does definitely play a little bit of a bigger factor here. Georgia is a 30-point favorite over the Tigers. Give me Auburn to cover. I mean, Georgia hasn't looked good the last 2 weeks. I know it's a rivalry game, but I think Auburn is going to be up a little bit to play this game. I think the question is not if Auburn can keep this game close for a little bit. I think is can Auburn play 4 quarters, because they haven't all season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I definitely think Georgia wins, but the Auburn covers. That's a real big number for a conference matchup when, one of the two teams is not Northwestern, not Vanderbilt, somebody like that. Give me Auburn to cover. Georgia wins. Like I said, Georgia really, the last couple of weeks, have not looked as just dominant as they did early in the season. Maybe it's because they're hitting a part of the schedule where, things are kind of in a lull and getting, them and Georgia, the Deep South Sordus rivalry, whatever they call it. Maybe that'll get them fired up again. But, I think Georgia wins, and Georgia probably wins it easily. But give me Auburn to cover. That's a big number. That's a real big number.
All right, I think we'll do 2 more games here. Here's an interesting one, 3:30 p.m. Fox, one that I'm actually going to be interested in. Number 11 Utah against number 18 UCLA. Utah, 3.5-point favorite here on the road in Pasadena. My gut tells me Utah, but something inside of me, Marty, is really wanting me to go UCLA in this one. That team is playing some really damn good football right now.
Yeah, I feel you on this. That said, I truly believe Utah is one of the 10 most talented, 10 best teams in the country, who right now is being hurt by just an inexplicable loss against a bad Florida team. Give me the Utes. I wouldn't be surprised to see UCLA pull this off. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think they're playing the best football they've played of the Chip Kelly era, but I think Utah gets it done.
At 3.5 points, give me UCLA to cover because I think Utah, if they win, is by a field goal. And then finally, our last game. Let's go 8 p.m. CBS doubleheader on CBS. Unfortunately, I will not. I'll be honest. I'll not be watching this game fully. I'll be watching my Philadelphia Phillies take on the St. Louis Cardinals in the playoffs. First time I've been able to say that in, 11 years exactly. 11 years exactly on basically. But yeah, Kansas is ranked. Phillies are in the playoffs. What's going on? But yeah, CBS 8 p.m. Texas A&M versus Alabama. Alabama 24-point favorite. Over under set at 51. Again, this is just such a big spread, and Alabama hasn't really been, convincing over the last few weeks. I know 49-26 over Arkansas, but that was a close game at one point before they pulled away. But at the same time, this Texas A&M team is just not good at all. You know what? Give me Alabama because I think Nick Saban is going to have this team smelling blood going into this one. And if you're Texas A&M, I know you beat Alabama last year, but I don't know how you have any confidence going forward. And if A&M gets blown out of this game, I don't think Jimbo gets fired right now, but it could become a very interesting job going in the next couple of weeks surrounding Jimbo because Texas A&M boosters have money, and if that program isn't going in the direction they like, they will make a change.
Remember back on National Signing Day when Jimbo Fisher came out and was talking about, playing the NIL game before NIL was a thing. It was clear as day taking shots at Nick Saban. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
I guarantee you Nick Saban remembers that too.
You think? You think he remembers?
Yeah, you combine that with how bad Texas A&M's offense is. Give me the Tide and give me the points. I think Saban is going to be out to prove a message on Saturday, not just to Jimbo Fisher, but to voters from around the country, that even without Bryce Young, they can beat anybody and do it handedly. I think Alabama just absolutely waxes Texas A&M, especially with the game being in Tuscaloosa.
Exactly. This game isn't down in College Station. This game is in Tuscaloosa. Alabama and the fans are going to be trying to return the favor big time for last year. And, you look at it, A&M may have 3 wins, but which one have they actually – when have they actually looked good at all this year? Sam Houston State, they didn't look good. They almost lost – they did lose to App State. They almost lost to Miami. They almost lost to Arkansas. And then they lose to Mississippi State, a very good football team. Yeah. And the Aggies are going to get waxed by the Tide in this game. It is not going to be pretty. I'm going to definitely be betting Alabama to cover that one. But, Marty, that's all we got for this episode. We were planning on a short episode, but, we know that isn't possible with us. Thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast. Be sure to go over to Nittany Nation on the Rivals Network to check us out. We got full coverage of Penn State football on there. Penn State basketball starting up soon. Penn State may be 3 weeks away from their whiteout, but we already have a growing whiteout visitors list. A lot of good names on there already. A lot more great names are going to be added, I'm sure. Be sure to go get your free trial, subscribe to us. A lot of good information is going to be coming out over there. Yeah, Marty, any other thoughts before we head off, before we talk to everybody, I guess, early next week to preview Michigan?
No, I don't think so. Enjoy your weekend, whatever it entails, whether it's, high school football, college football, the NFL, a little bit of each, whatever it is. Enjoy a good weekend of football, everybody.
All right. Like you said, enjoy a good weekend of football, and we'll talk to everybody, I guess, early next week, maybe Wednesday, to talk Penn State, Michigan, as that should be a top 10 matchup in Ann Arbor next Saturday afternoon. Basically next Saturday afternoon. All right, everybody, have a good one. We'll talk to you later.